everyone, welcome to She Knows Arsenal Daily, keeping you up to date on all things Arsenal, so make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel to help your girl out. I'm choosing the winner for the 20K giveaway on Friday, so make sure you guys enter if you're interested in winning a £200 gift card to Arsenal, as well as a year subscription to my Patreon. You guys can go ahead and find information on how to enter up here, so make sure you guys have entered. 17 Arsenal players have went off to international duty. Degaard has withdrawn from international duty with Norway to allow him to recover from his recent concussion. He was concussed by Cedric. Pass it on. There's an important UEFA Euro 2024 qualifier for Kiwior and Poland coming up on Friday night. The Czech Republic, they face the Czech Republic, and should they beat the Czech Republic, they have a better chance of qualifying for the tournament next week. Group C, Alexander Zinchenko and Ukraine are 3 points ahead of Italy, but Italy have a game in hand. Jorginho has been called up by Italy, whose medical staff are assessing him ahead of their fixtures. Two countries meet next Monday night. Our Brazilian trio of Gabriel Martinelli, and Gabriel Jesus have all big World Cup 26 qualifiers against Colombia and Argentina. Brazil are currently third in the table. And the November international break represents the start of a World Cup qualifying for Japan, which is for Takehiro Tamiyasu, and Egypt for Mohamed El Neni. Aaron Ramsdale, Declan Rice, and Bukayo Saka have all been called up for England, who have already secured qualification for Euro 2024. Belgium have already qualified for the competition as well and are top of Group F, ahead of their final game against Azerbaijan. Following their friendly with Serbia, Leandro Trossard has been called up for the Belgian national team. William Saliba and France are in the same boat, top of Group B, and able to play their final two Euro qualifiers, knowing that they have booked a place in the competition. Spain, David Raya, are playing for pride, having already qualified for the Euros from Group A, ahead of games against Cyprus and Georgia. And as for Estonia, Karl Hein has already been eliminated. And for Germany, who hosts Euro 2024, and therefore don't have to worry about qualifying, there are two friendly games over the next 2 weeks that Kai Havertz could be involved in. All I really see is that I don't expect to see, we shouldn't see Bukayo Saka playing for England if they've already qualified. Would love to see some rest for some of our players that have already qualified. I would imagine some of our players that are not as solidified for their national team, like somebody like William Saliba, will probably get a little bit more playing time for France. The national team that probably has the most to lose is Brazil, with the three Gabriels having to deal with the World Cup qualifier. So I'm sure they will all pretty much be involved in some capacity unless Gabriel Jesus is not fit enough. So we're going to talk about that as well. That's just a little bit of a summary of what's going on with everybody that's in international duty. So Martinelli could potentially start for Brazil through the middle against Colombia. They have a World Cup qualifier against Colombia, and if you watch this video clip, you can see that Martinelli is playing in a more central role.
Ou melhor, para encarar esse tipo de marcação que vai receber na Colômbia, uma marcação alta. Nesse momento, para sair dessa marcação alta, seleção adversária marcando com 4 atletas na primeira linha. E a seleção brasileira voltando com o Alisson, que faz o passe por dentro. E a seleção brasileira vai buscando espaços. Nesse momento, o Martinelli é quem está por dentro e consegue carregar a bola, e a seleção brasileira consegue o contra-ataque. Um belíssimo contra-ataque saindo da linha de pressão que pode dar em gol. E a bola acaba batendo na trave, mas sem dúvida nenhuma.
Gabriel Martinelli started as a striker at Arsenal, so it's going to be interesting to see whether or not Brazil go with this setup against Colombia. They will most likely be missing Gabriel Jesus, who we'll talk about in just a minute. But Martinelli is probably their best option through the middle. They started with Rodrigo at the number 10, Vinny on the left, and Rafinha on the right. And so that leaves a spot open for Martinelli, the type of player that they need to use in an opportunity like this. As much as they're in a transition and they're probably not feeling all that great about the options that they have, what they do have in abundance is a lot of young talent, and Martinelli is a part of that group. That could be a real platform for Gabriel Martinelli to, you know, take off of for his national team career, which again, they're in transition. So players like Gabriel and Martinelli have an opportunity to establish themselves as they're kind of like in this in-between period. And if they could play a role in Brazil qualifying for the World Cup, that'll do a lot of good in their bid to be a part of future squads. So I am interested to see whether or not they go with this lineup. But if they do, I mean, that is a very, very exciting front four of Rodrigo, Martinelli, Vinny, and Rafinha. I'll be very interested to see it. Gabriel will probably start at left center back, and he deserves that. He's worked really hard and has gained favor by playing quite a few minutes under the new manager and doing a good job. So well done for him, and I look forward to watching him play against Colombia as well. Gabriel Jesus will not take part against Colombia. He can be seen in this clip right here, kind of limping into Brazil camp for Seleção. Like, we already kind of spoke about this, that the only reason why he's there is because Brazil feel like Arsenal are not as forthright as they should be in terms of like the injuries for their players that are called up for the Brazilian national team, i.e. the Martinelli debacle where they wanted to call him up, but Arsenal said he was injured, and then he later played for Manchester City. So he had to fly all the way to South America just for their doctors to assess him. And they've come to the conclusion that he probably is not fit enough to play against Colombia. So both Seleção and Arsenal need to work together in order to make sure that Gabriel Jesus's recovery is not interrupted, disrupted, and basically thrown in the trash by them trying to rush him back into fitness when we know a hamstring is a very an awkward kind of injury to recover from. So hopefully they don't rush him back. Martin Odegaard is expected to be ready for Arsenal's next match against Brentford after the international break, which is really, really good news. We all know that Martin Odegaard is a super important part of the team. Already kind of spoke about this going into the December fixtures. It's so important for Martin Odegaard to be available and fit and ready to go. And I do like that it seems like Arsenal are a lot more savvy when it comes to dealing with national team setups. Now, it might rub some the wrong way, like the Brazilian national team, but in terms of Norway, they're awful. And, you know, Martin Odegaard has went to every single camp. He's played every single minute for them. And so he has earned the right to take more time off with this concussion. And that's a good thing for Arsenal. So I look forward to seeing him against Brentford after the international break. Roma boss Jose Mourinho is pushing to sign Arsenal defender Jakub Kiwior on loan in January. So this is not the first time that Kiwior has been linked to a move away. Sevilla were also really interested in him in the summer, and Arteta blocked the move. I also saw that another Italian team, it might have been AC Milan, is also interested in bringing him in. He's not getting playing time, and so a talented young defender like Kiwior is going to get a lot of eyes in January. People are going to want to bolster their squad. Now, should Arsenal allow him to go? Absolutely not. We are one injury away from total crisis. That being said, I do wonder what the plan is for Kiwior. You know, like Fabio Vieira, they've both come in from other leagues and had a slower adaptation period, had some mixed performances, and the manager doesn't seem to trust them as much as other players. Now, just in terms of Kiwior, he has a lot of players in his way. He has Zinchenko there, Tomiyasu is there. If Timber was fit, he'd probably be there. So what is the plan with Kiwior? Does Arteta just not trust him? Does he not feel like he is needed at this stage? I do think that he's too talented and too useful not to be used. And when we talk about playing on the ball, I know that Tomiyasu is more experienced, but Tomiyasu was brought in to play on the right, and now he's playing on the left. But Kiwior is very good with the ball at his feet. He does have a good passing range, and he can play, maybe not as good inverted as Tomiyasu, but he can do it, and he's a very good defender. So he needs more playing time. Where that playing time is going to come from, I don't know. We're already out of the Carabao Cup, but there are opportunities like we had against Sheffield, like we probably also had against Burnley, where Kiwior could have been trusted to play. So I don't anticipate Arsenal allowing him to leave. They really shouldn't, because again, we're one injury away from crisis, but what is the plan with Kiwior? If you can't trust him in games against, Burnley or, whatever, then what is the plan with this guy? Because he's such a talented player that people are going to continue to knock on our door for him. And at some point, he will want to play. So, he's young, but he ain't that young. So we'll see how that develops, but I don't anticipate Arsenal letting him go. But what are your guys' thoughts on Jakub Kiwior? Jorginho was asked about his future, and he said this: I am very much in doubt about returning to Italy. I would like to return, but I don't know when the right time would be. I want to return, yes, but I don't know when. I feel I still have things to do at Arsenal. Jorginho is very well liked at Arsenal. I think you can tell that Arteta trusts him. He loves his experience. He likes, I think, his technical quality on the ball. And Arteta in the past has always relied upon experience, whether that worked for him or not. We know the story on that. When he was trying to rely upon the likes of Willian, and so he had to go with the younger players in order to get something out of this team. But Arteta has historically relied upon experience, especially in midfield. And, Jorginho adds a little bit of that. No, he doesn't have the legs. No, he doesn't have the athleticism. But what he does have is what you need up there, which is the brain. He knows he's the coach on the pitch, especially when Odegaard is not there. And he's captained the side quite a few times. And he started quite a few games in Thomas Partey's absence. So Jorginho would probably want to stay in that circumstance if he knows he's going to get playing time. But when Thomas Partey leaves, once we buy a couple of midfielders, which we should be, Jorginho's time will be limited. And I'm not sure that Arsenal should, give him another contract. His deal will be running out this summer. And to extend him at this point, I feel like would be kicking the can down the road. I'm not saying that, Jorginho would be a terrible player to have around, but I think based on this season so far, we need a massive kind of like rebuild or reshuffle in that midfield. And if there's one thing that Arsenal need is more legs. Arsenal definitely need players with a little bit more athleticism and strength and power and pace, because the Premier League is getting stronger and faster. And I'm not saying that means you don't need technical quality, you do, but Arsenal should be able to recruit players that kind of can do it all. And Jorginho is, I don't want to call him one-dimensional, but he has some very apparent flaws that end up making us very easy to defend against. And sometimes he's rendered useless out there because he just cannot keep up with the match. So, I was open to the idea of him being the El Neni replacement, but seeing how things have shook out with the midfield so far this season, I do think we need a massive reshuffle. So not kicking him out the door, but definitely not keeping him back. Okay, if he wants to leave, it is what it is. But this summer is such a good opportunity for Arsenal to start anew and bring in one or two midfielders, preferably two, to kind of give us a new platform in there next to Declan Rice and Odegaard so that we can move forward. But I love Jorginho, love what he talks about. He does really look like a part of the furniture there at Arsenal. And so in the meantime, I think he's a very important part of the squad. But you guys let me know what you think his future should be beyond this summer. Reiss Nelson and Fabio Vieira featured for the under-21s against Reading last night. First team squad members Fabio Vieira and Reiss Nelson both started the match, and Fabio Vieira pulled one back from the penalty spot when Arsenal under-21s were 2-0 down. And Reiss Nelson actually had a really good moment on the touchline, on the sideline, with some really nice skill that saw Arsenal pull one back to 3-2. Courtesy of Keon Edwards. That was the assist that Reiss Nelson got. You guys will see the clip here. And I thought Nelson looked good. He looked bright in that one little shot. Nelson is a quality player. He doesn't get enough playing time at Arsenal, but he is a quality player that would definitely cook anybody, in that circumstance. And Vieira had another penalty in the second half, but it was saved by Joel Pereira. So he made one penalty and then had one saved. And it was funny because on socials, obviously it's like he got in trouble. It's not that. Vieira, I don't think he's in trouble. It's just Reiss Nelson and Vieira are just going to be sitting around for the next 2 weeks. And so they need to be playing a little bit of football, staying fresh. And the two of them just don't get enough playing time in order to, really rely upon them. So Arteta, I think, is trying to figure out a way to keep them fresh and keep them going. And playing with the under-21s against a first team running side is probably a good way to do it. So we've had a couple of conversations about Vieira on the channel and why he hasn't adapted or why he hasn't started to impose himself. He's very inconsistent. I think his playing time is inconsistent, but at the same time at Arsenal, you have to take the chances that you're given. And getting that red card, I think, is really damaging for a player that, you know, was probably just about to start to get more playing time again. Now you're out for 3 games. So Vieira is a mystery. I'm not quite sure how that's going to pan out. You guys know I'm a huge fan of Vieira. I think he's very talented, but this is Arsenal. It's you know, we've seen so many good midfielders, attacking midfielders come through. I don't think it's necessarily just about his size. I think it's about feeling confident, receiving the ball and wiggling away from pressure. We see the likes of Foden and players like that. It's not about your size. It's about, I think, the confidence on the ball. And as good of a technical player as Vieira is, I do think sometimes he's lacking the confidence to make a real impression at Arsenal. When he's doing it, he looks really good, but we don't see it enough, I think, to feel confident to play him more often, you know. So it's unfortunate, Vieira, in that regard. In terms of Reiss Nelson, I think we've all asked the question multiple times, why do we give him the contract if he's not going to play? If he can't be trusted in certain circumstances, then why is he here? He's unlucky, I think, to have played against West Ham in the Carabao Cup, and he was really the only bright spot beyond maybe Kiwior in that game. But, you know, Arteta doesn't trust him enough. And I get Martinelli and Saka are so good, so it's like, you know, Reiss Nelson and just whatever. But I just feel like maybe we should have just allowed him to go if we weren't going to use him that much and we're going to run Saka into the ground. I think Reiss Nelson has a lot more to give, and I think he's done a lot with the little minutes that he's had. But, you know, what can you do if the manager doesn't trust him? So you guys will let me know what you think about the 2 players. I think it's a good thing that they played in that under-21s match to keep them fresh. But ultimately, what are we keeping them fresh for? All right, guys, that's it for the show. I hope you guys enjoyed it, this little news update. If you guys want to have a longer discussion at 7 p.m., I'm going to have Hepta Views on the show. If you guys are not familiar with his work, he's one of the best photographers I've ever seen. I've worked with him before. He's always at the Emirates taking some of the best photos of the players that we love. And he's also doing work with other teams, national teams, and things like that. So make sure you guys come back at 7 p.m. UK time. And also make sure you enter the giveaway before Friday, because I'm going to be choosing the winner shortly. And I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Like and subscribe. Bye, guys.